Was I wrong for absolutely demolishing my best friend's life after she publicly humiliated me for being deaf? I'm talking about a level of public shaming that stripped away every last shred of my dignity, all because I couldn't hear. You tell me if you would have done the same thing, because honestly, looking back, part of me wonders if I went too far, but then another part of me remembers the burning shame and the absolute betrayal. And I think no, she deserved every single bit of it. It all started so innocently, as these things often do. I met Sarah in high school, and we clicked instantly. She was vibrant, outgoing, and had this infectious laugh that could brighten even my darkest days. I was and still am profoundly deaf. I rely heavily on lip reading, sign language, and a powerful hearing aid, but even with all that, communication can be a challenge, especially in noisy environments. Sarah, bless her heart, always made an effort. She learned basic ASL phrases, would patiently repeat herself if I missed something, and never made me feel like a burden. We were inseparable. We went to prom together, shared secrets under starry skies, and even planned our futures, half jokingly of course, to live in a house with a huge garden and a separate art studio for me. Our bond felt unbreakable, forged in the fires of teenage angst and countless inside jokes. After high school, we decided to go to the same university, a decision that felt natural and exciting. We even managed to get a dorm room together, which was a dream come true for both of us. The first year was fantastic. We navigated the bewildering world of college, celebrated small victories, and comforted each other through academic struggles and relationship dramas. It was during our second year that things started to subtly shift. Sarah joined a really exclusive sorority, the kind that everyone talked about and aspired to. I was happy for her, truly. I knew how much she wanted to fit in, to be part of something bigger. I even encouraged her to go to their recruitment events. I wasn't interested in joining myself. Sorority life, with its loud parties and constant social interaction, wasn't really my scene. I preferred quieter gatherings, deep conversations, and the occasional art exhibition. I knew my limitations, and I embraced them. At first, Sarah would still spend most of her free time with me. We'd study together, grab coffee, and have our usual movie nights. But slowly, her sorority commitments started to take precedence. There were late-night meetings, themed parties I wasn't invited to, and weekend trips I only heard about secondhand. I understood, or at least I tried to. She was building new friendships, exploring a different part of her identity. I told myself that true friendship could withstand distance and new experiences. I truly believed that. The first real crack appeared when I noticed she started inviting me to fewer and fewer events with her new sorority sisters. When I did go, it was always awkward. They'd talk quickly, laugh at inside jokes I couldn't follow, and sometimes, they'd even turn their backs to me while speaking, making lip reading impossible. Sarah would try to catch me up, but it always felt like an afterthought. A quick whisper in my ear after the moment had passed. I started feeling like an accessory, an obligation, rather than a cherished friend. I brought it up to her once, gently, trying not to sound accusatory. I told her I felt a little left out, and sometimes it was hard for me to keep up in those group settings. She immediately got defensive, saying I was being unfair, that she was just trying to balance everything, and that I should make more of an effort to be outgoing. That stung. I was outgoing in my own way, but I also understood my communication challenges. It wasn't about a lack of effort on my part. It was about accessibility, about people making a tiny bit of effort on their part, something Sarah used to do so naturally. Despite this, I tried to push through. I didn't want to lose her. She was my oldest, dearest friend. I convinced myself it was just a phase, that once the initial excitement of the sorority wore off, things would go back to normal. Oh, how wrong I was. The ultimate betrayal, the incident that changed everything, happened at the annual university Charity Gala. It was a huge event, a formal affair, and Sarah was on the organizing committee through her sorority. She had been hyping it up for weeks, talking about how elegant it would be, how many important people would be there. She even helped me pick out a dress, a beautiful emerald green gown that made me feel surprisingly confident. I was genuinely excited. This was a chance for us to reconnect, to have a nice evening out like old times, away from the loud sorority house. When we arrived, the ballroom was packed. Music was playing, people were chatting, and the general din was overwhelming for my hearing aid. I immediately started focusing on lip reading, trying to stay close to Sarah. We found a table with some of her sorority sisters and their dates. Introductions were made, polite smiles exchanged, and then the conversation started flowing, quickly as usual. I tried my best to keep up. I smiled, nodded, and occasionally interjected when I caught enough words to form a coherent thought. But mostly, I felt like I was watching a movie with the sound off, trying to guess the plot from facial expressions alone. Sarah was across the table from me, deeply engrossed in conversation with a particularly charming young man. She looked radiant, laughing loudly, her eyes sparkling. I felt a pang of loneliness, but I told myself to be happy for her. This was her moment. Then one of her sorority sisters, a girl named Jessica who had always been particularly frosty towards me, leaned over and asked me something. The music was loud, and her voice was soft. I couldn't quite catch it. I leaned in. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Could you repeat it?" I asked, enunciating clearly, a skill I'd perfected over years of navigating a hearing world. Jessica rolled her eyes, a gesture that didn't escape my notice. I said, she practically shouted, over-enunciating as if I were a child. "Are you having fun pretending to be part of the conversation?" The table went silent. All eyes were on me. My cheeks flushed crimson. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken judgment. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Before I could even formulate a response, before I could articulate the hurt, the anger, or the simple fact that I wasn't pretending, Sarah, my best friend, spoke up. And what she said utterly shattered me. She didn't defend me. She didn't scold Jessica. Instead, she let out a small, nervous laugh, and said, "Oh, don't mind her. She's just deaf. Sometimes it's hard for her to keep up. It's really cute, actually, how she tries." Goo. She called my disability, my constant struggle, my daily battle to simply exist and communicate in a world not built for me, cute. As if I were a puppy trying to fetch a ball. The word hung in the air, a poisonous dagger plunged straight into my heart. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with a sudden, all-consuming rage. The humiliation was so profound, so public, so utterly crushing, that for a moment, I couldn't breathe. My best friend, the person who was supposed to be my unwavering ally, had just thrown me under the bus, not just metaphorically, but literally, in front of a room full of strangers and people she considered important. She had used my disability to diminish me, to make me a spectacle, to solidify her own standing by making me seem like a pathetic, struggling accessory. The pitying glances, the uncomfortable coughs, the averted eyes, they all burned into my memory. In that instant, something inside me snapped. The years of friendship, the shared memories, the unbreakable bond. It all disintegrated into dust. I felt an icy calm wash over me, a dangerous clarity. I knew with absolute certainty that our friendship was over. And I knew, with an even greater certainty, that she would pay for this. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling like lead. I didn't say a word. I just looked at Sarah, truly looked at her, and in my gaze, I hoped she saw the complete and utter demolition of everything we had. Then, I turned and walked out of the ballroom, leaving my emerald green dress, my shattered dignity, and my broken heart behind. I didn't care about the confused whispers, the stares, or the potential scandal. All I cared about was getting away from that suffocating environment and planning my next move. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was humiliated beyond belief by my best friend, for simply being myself, for having a disability she once claimed to understand and support. Before I tell you what happened next, what I decided to do, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let it go? Would you have confronted her directly? Or would you have sought a different kind of justice? I'm genuinely curious to know your thoughts. I spent the next few days in a fog of anger and despair. I avoided our dorm room, crashing on a friend's couch, telling her only that Sarah and I had a huge fight. I couldn't bring myself to articulate the depth of the betrayal, the particular sting of being humiliated for something so fundamental to my identity. Sarah tried to call me, messaged me dozens of times, but I ignored every single one. I needed to think, to process, and most importantly to plan. I realized that a simple confrontation wouldn't be enough. Apologies would feel hollow, words meaningless. She had shown her true colors, and those colors were ugly. I needed something more, something that would make her truly understand the pain she had inflicted, something that would leave a lasting impression. I wanted her to feel a fraction of the public shame and isolation I had felt. And then an idea started to form, insidious and brilliant. It wasn't about revenge in the typical sense. It was about exposing her, about dismantling her carefully constructed image, especially within the very sorority she valued above everything else. I knew their culture. Reputation was everything. And I knew Sarah's biggest secret, a secret she had confided in me years ago, a secret that had the power to unravel her entire carefully curated life. Sarah had always presented herself as coming from a wealthy, influential family. She drove a fancy car, wore designer clothes, and always had the latest gadgets. She often spoke about her parents' sprawling estate, their summer home in the Hamptons, and their philanthropic endeavors. This image was a huge part of her appeal to the sorority, which prided itself on attracting the best, meaning often, the wealthiest and most connected. But I knew the truth. Years ago, in a moment of vulnerability, Sarah had confessed that her family was actually struggling financially. Her father had lost his job in a bad investment, and they had taken out massive loans to keep up appearances, especially for Sarah's university tuition and sorority fees. The fancy car was leased, the designer clothes were high-end fakes or heavily discounted, and the summer home was a rental they could barely afford for a week. She was terrified of anyone finding out, particularly her sorority sisters, who she believed would ostracize her if they knew she wasn't as affluent as she pretended to be. I had promised her, solemnly, that I would never tell a soul. It was a sacred trust, a testament to our deep friendship. But that trust had been violated. She had humiliated me, used my disability as a punchline, and in doing so, had nullified any previous promises of loyalty. My conscience wrestled with it for a brief moment, but the image of her smug face, the word cute echoing in my ears, quickly silenced any lingering doubts. This wasn't just about getting even, it was about justice. The sorority had an unwritten rule. Members were expected to contribute significantly to charity drives and fundraising events, often from their own pockets, or through their wealthy family connections. Sarah was always front and center, boasting about her family's generous donations, which were, in reality, either non-existent or much smaller than she claimed, stretched thin to maintain the illusion. The gala where I was humiliated was precisely one of these major fundraising events. I remembered overhearing Sarah tell a couple of her sorority sisters, loudly and confidently, that her parents were making a substantial donation to the university's arts program. An amount she mentioned was in the 5 figures. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this was a lie. Her parents barely had enough to cover her tuition, let alone make such a large donation. My plan began to solidify. It wasn't about destroying her financially, but about exposing the foundation of lies upon which she had built her social standing. I started gathering information, not hard evidence, but enough circumstantial detail to plant seeds of doubt. I remembered specific conversations, dates, and times when she had boasted about her family's wealth, both to me and more recently to her sorority sisters. I also found discreet ways to confirm my suspicions about her family's actual financial situation, through publicly available information that confirmed their recent financial difficulties and the sale of certain assets. It wasn't illegal, just observant. The sorority was having its monthly formal meeting, a mandatory event where all members were present. This was my window of opportunity. I knew Sarah would be there, basking in the glow of her perceived success and the compliments she was receiving for her help with the gala. I didn't attend the meeting directly, of course. That would be too confrontational, too obvious. Instead, I crafted an anonymous email. I was careful to use a burner account and to send it from a public computer off campus, leaving no digital trace back to me. The email was addressed to the sorority president and a few other key members of the executive board. It was politely worded, almost concerned in its tone. I started by expressing my admiration for the sorority's philanthropic efforts, and how much I valued their commitment to integrity. Then I subtly brought up Sarah. I mentioned her enthusiasm for the gala and her claims about her family's generous donations. I then, very innocently, posed a question. I overheard Sarah mentioning a 5-figure donation her parents were making to the arts program. Given the recent news about her family's financial struggles, which of course is private, but has been discussed on campus, I was just wondering if the sorority had perhaps confirmed the receipt of this pledged donation? It would be a shame for the sorority's impressive fundraising totals to be based on an unfulfilled promise. I didn't explicitly accuse her of lying. I simply raised a polite, seemingly innocent question, framed with concern for the sorority's reputation. I knew exactly how this would play out. The sorority president, a stickler for rules and appearances, would immediately investigate. They would check with the university's development office to confirm the donation. When they found no record of it, or a significantly smaller one, the questions would begin. And the fact that I mentioned recent news about her family's financial struggles would add a layer of credibility, implying that I wasn't just making a random accusation, but had some basis for my concern. I hit send and felt a profound sense of calm. The chess pieces were in motion. The following week was a whirlwind of hushed whispers and strange looks whenever Sarah walked by. She tried to approach me a couple of times, but I simply walked away, giving her a cold, impassive stare. I knew she was starting to feel the pressure. Her meticulously crafted facade was cracking. The sorority president, a formidable woman named Brenda, was known for her stern demeanor and her unwavering commitment to the sorority's image. I heard through the grapevine that she had indeed called Sarah into a private meeting. I imagine the scene vividly. Sarah, stammering and trying to explain, Brenda's unyielding gaze, the mounting evidence of her deception. The truth, or rather, the lack of the promised donation, quickly became undeniable. The sorority had relied on Sarah's claims when reporting their fundraising success, and the discrepancy was now a glaring hole in their financial records. It wasn't just about the money, it was about trust, integrity, and the fundamental lie she had built her social standing upon. The backlash was swift and brutal. Sarah was stripped of her leadership position within the sorority, accused of misrepresentation, and damaging the sorority's reputation. Her sorority sisters, who had once adored her, now looked at her with suspicion and disdain. Her friends quickly distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with someone who had been exposed as a fraud. The university, while not directly involved in the sorority's internal affairs, definitely noticed the internal turmoil, and Brenda made sure to quietly emphasize that Sarah had misled them as well regarding the pledge donation. Sarah became a pariah. She was no longer invited to parties, her calls went unanswered, and even her once loyal followers started whispering behind her back. Her fancy car, which was now attracting negative attention, suddenly vanished from the parking lot. The designer clothes seemed less impressive, now that everyone knew the truth behind them. Her reputation, the very thing she had prioritized over our friendship and my dignity, was utterly destroyed. I saw her once, a few weeks after the email, sitting alone in the university cafeteria, looking pale and defeated. Her once vibrant laugh was gone, replaced by a vacant stare. Her usual entourage was nowhere to be seen. She looked up and caught my eye. For a moment, our gazes locked. I saw a flicker of recognition, then deep, agonizing pain, and finally, a profound understanding of what I had done. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I didn't even acknowledge her with a nod. I simply held her gaze, my expression neutral. And then I turned and walked away, just as she had forced me to do at the gala. I never spoke to her again. She eventually dropped out of university, unable to withstand the constant scrutiny and isolation. I heard she moved back home, far away, and completely disappeared from our social circles. Some might say I went too far. Some might say I was vindictive, cruel even. But when I think back to that night, to the burning shame, to the casual dismissal of my struggle, to the word cute, dripping with condescension from her lips, I honestly don't regret a single thing. She chose to prioritize her superficial image over our friendship and my basic human dignity. She chose to make me a spectacle for her own social gain. I simply held up a mirror and showed everyone, including herself, who she truly was. The irony wasn't lost on me. She valued her reputation, her social standing, and her perceived wealth above all else. And it was precisely those things that I systematically, methodically, and quite effectively dismantled. It wasn't about revenge. It was about demonstrating the consequences of betrayal, about proving that actions have repercussions, especially when those actions inflict such deep, personal pain. I know this is a heavy story, and I'm sure it'll spark a lot of debate, but I needed to share it, to finally get it off my chest. So tell me, was I wrong for what I did? Do you think she deserved it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you were on my side, and subscribe for more stories like this. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.